In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace your transmission mount. That's the one that sits right here on the driver's side and supports the transmission. So let's get started. In order to get to the transmission mount, we actually have to remove the battery tray, and move the airbox out of the way. So I'll start by removing this brace for the battery, 10mm socket. This is just a J-hook here. So to unhook it, you just push it down and sideways and then it'll come out. Then use a 10mm socket, remove the negative battery terminal first, loosen up this nut that clamps it down. Once the terminal's loose, pull it up and move it out of the way back here where it can't make connection. And we'll do the same to the positive. That way we can completely remove the battery and get it out of our way. Remove the battery. Remove the battery tray, which is just a plastic piece that sits down there. And as you can see, this is the engine mount that we're after here. Then let's loosen up this clamp. Be careful with these. As you can see, I already sprayed it with some rust penetrant, but these break often. Use a 10mm socket to loosen that up. Now let's unclip the clips that hold the top of the airbox in. Pop that out. I'm not going to remove it completely. I'm just going to set it aside over here. Remove the air filter. This is a good time to check it and inspect it. Looks like it's pretty clean except for some leaves, so take those out of here. Inside the airbox, there are 3 10mm bolts that hold this down. Remove all 3. Now you can simply lift this up and out. The air inlet pipe is attached here, but this just pops off as you twist it out of here. Okay. Now we have a lot more space to work with. Remove this wiring harness. It just has a little clip here that you can pry up. I'm going to support the engine with a jack. I'm going to put it right there on the transmission, on the aluminum part. Do not put it on the transmission pan or the engine oil pan. Those are not to be jacked up on. As you'll notice, I have a rubber pad which will protect that surface from being damaged by the metal jack. Give it a couple pumps, just enough to release pressure off of the engine mounts. Unbolt the 4 14mm bolts that hold this bracket onto the frame rail. I'm going to start with the 2 up top. And then there are 2 on the sides. And the last one is on the back side over here. Okay. This one's unbolted. Now with the engine jacked up a little bit, we have enough space to clear this battery support. So 14mm socket on the nut side and hold the bolt with a 14mm wrench and take this out. Pull the bolt through. Okay. And there it is. Make sure this mounting surface is nice and clean. Take the new mount, slide it down, take the bolt, and slide it through. Put the nut on, and I'm going to get it close, but I won't completely tighten this yet because as you can see, there's some adjustment here. So I want to let the engine basically seat itself in first before I fully tighten this. Okay, it can still move. I'm going to leave it like this. We'll lower the engine down, and then we'll position that mount where it needs to be. So let's go down very slowly. I'm trying to watch it at the same time. Of course, you have a much better view. That looks good right about there. All right, I went very gentle with my air gun, so now we can fully torque it. Torque this bolt to 38 foot-pounds. Now it's time to put these bolts back. I'm going to start the ones underneath first because they line up the best. And then for these, I'm going to have to just lift up on this bracket a little bit. They line up, but because the weight of the engine is pulling it down, I don't want it to cross thread. We'll bottom out the 2 top ones first, and then we'll put those in. This one I can't torque, so right off the bat I'm just going to take a long wrench and make sure that it's nice and tight. The rest of them I'm going to torque to 47 foot-pounds. And that torque would have applied to this one too if I could, but like I said, I can't get to it. Those are all tightened down. Now if you haven't yet, release pressure off the engine. Let's put the lower half of the air box in. Make sure you connect it to this intake duct that comes out of the fender area. Clip it in, line up the bolt holes, and let's put the bolts in. Make sure this is nice and secure and doesn't wobble around. Put your air filter back. Make sure it's facing the right way. You don't want the dirty side up so that all the dirt would be sucked up into the engine. Obviously, put the dirty side down. Put back the top of this, slide it back into the intake ducting here. Make sure you line up these tabs here. If you don't line these up, the airbox will not seal up, and you'll know because you won't be able to clip these in. And if you force them and close them like that, well, you'll have issues where air gets drawn in. Tighten this clamp up. Okay, make sure that's nice and secure. Put back the battery tray. It has an arrow indicating the front of the vehicle, so make sure you put it in that way, because this little notch has to line up with the support underneath it. Otherwise, this will move around, and that would not be safe. There we go, just like that. And now let's place the battery on top of that. Reconnect the battery. Do the positive first, then the negative. Now let's tighten up these clamps. Try not to over tighten these, but as long as your terminal doesn't move around, it's good. And do the same to the negative. Nice and snug, doesn't move. Let's put the battery hold down bracket in. This J hook at the back, make sure you hook it into its hole. And at the front, put the front bolt in. Let's tighten both of these down. I like to tighten the front first because this one you just tighten until it's bottomed out. And you do your adjustment on this one where it can basically pivot higher or lower depending on how tight you need to clamp this. Obviously don't crush the battery. As long as it's snug in here and it can't move around, you know you're good. If you have one of these covers, cover up the terminal.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.